You are not disturbed by life, but by your refusal to govern your own judgments. Every day you react faster than you think, and that is why your mind feels out of control, not the world. If you are ready to stop being pulled by impressions and start living by reason, stay here with me. This is a place for those who want to examine themselves honestly and train their inner life through discipline, not comfort. If this is the kind of clarity you are looking for, you can subscribe and continue walking this path with steady attention. What follows is not encouragement but instruction for the mind. You will learn how to separate what is yours from what is not, how to remove attachment from outcomes, and how to remain steady when life refuses to follow your expectations. You do not need more desire, you need clearer judgment, and that begins now. Number 1. Master your judgments before chasing anything beyond your control. You are not ruined by what happens to you. You are ruined by the judgment you add to what happens. That is where your slavery begins. Not in the insult, not in the delay, not in the loss, not in the silence from someone you wanted. It begins the moment you say to yourself that this event has power over your peace. It begins the moment you hand your mind to the outside world and let it decide whether you will stand upright or collapse. Look closely at your life and stop excusing yourself. How much of your suffering is truly caused by events, and how much is caused by your refusal to meet those events as a rational human being? You have been treating impressions as facts. You have been treating first reactions as truths. You have been reacting as though every feeling that rises inside you deserves obedience. It does not. A feeling is not a command. A fear is not a verdict. A desire is not a law. Your mind is given to you so you may examine what appears before you and decide what is worthy of assent. This is the first work, not to fix the world, not to make people behave, not to force life into your preferred shape. The first work is to govern the faculty that judges, because once your judgment is disciplined, the rest of life loses much of its hold over you. The world will still move. People will still speak. Bodies will age, plans will fail, fortune will remain what it has always been, unsteady, indifferent, unreliable, but your mind will no longer be dragged around by every gust of circumstance. You will no longer live as a servant of appearances. You will begin to live as a rational being. Understand this without confusion. What is up to you is your judgment, your choice, your assent, your refusal, your desire, your aversion, your use of what happens. What is not up to you is the body you were given, the reputation others attach to you, the words other people choose, their opinions, their moods, their departures, their betrayals, their praise, their silence, the weather, time, chance, death. If you confuse these two realms, you will suffer endlessly. If you separate them with honesty, you begin to become free. Most people do not even know what they are trying to control. They wake up and immediately reach outward. They want a response from someone else. They want a message. They want a result. They want a guarantee. They want proof that life will reward their effort before they have even made the effort. This is why they are always tense. They are building their peace on things that do not belong to them. They are placing their life in the hands of what can be taken in a moment, and then they call themselves unlucky when they are anxious. You must stop this habit at the root. Before you chase anything, inspect whether it belongs to you. Before you desire it, ask whether it is in your power. Before you fear losing it, ask whether you ever possessed it in the first place. Most of your frustration comes from chasing what cannot be secured. You chase the respect of others, you chase certainty, you chase comfort, you chase a future without difficulty, you chase a self-image that cannot be threatened. Yet none of these are yours to command. You can work for them. You cannot own them. There is a great difference. A rational person does not demand that life be gentle. A rational person demands that his own judgment be just. That is enough. When an event appears, do not ask first whether it pleases you. Ask whether it is true. Ask what depends on you now. Ask what virtue requires now. Ask what choice keeps your mind in agreement with nature and reason now. This pause is the beginning of mastery. A man who can pause before reacting already stands above most people, because most people are governed before they have even understood what they feel. The undisciplined mind moves faster than wisdom. It sees a difficulty and cries out. It sees a delay and calls it injustice. It sees criticism and calls it attack. It sees loss and calls it disaster. It sees uncertainty and calls it danger. But none of these words are yet a judgment fit for a rational being. They are only the noise of a mind that has not been trained. You must train it as you would train a body. Repetition, endurance, correction, and above all, honesty. Be honest about the stories you tell yourself. You say, "They are ignoring me," and immediately you suffer. But what exactly is the suffering? Is it the fact of being ignored, or is it the thought that you require their attention to be whole? You say, "I failed," and immediately you shrink. But what exactly failed? Did your character fail, or did an outcome fail to match your hope? If your aim was good and your effort was sincere, then the event did not destroy your worth. It only revealed what lay beyond your control. If you learn from it, it becomes useful. If you grieve over it as though it were a wound to your essence, then you are misusing your mind. The discipline begins here. Separate the event from the judgment. The event is plain. The judgment is chosen. The event is that a plan did not unfold. The judgment is that this means your life has been made small. The event is that someone spoke harshly. The judgment is that you have been diminished. The event is that you were not chosen. The judgment is that your value has been denied. These judgments are optional. They are often false. They are always within your power to examine. And once you can examine them, you can refuse them. Do not think this means becoming cold. Stoicism does not ask you to become dead. It asks you to become awake. You will still feel the first sting of an impression. You are human, but you are not required to become the second wound. The first wound may come from loss or disappointment or insult. The second wound comes from your own surrender to the impression. The first may be unavoidable, the second is voluntary, and what is voluntary can be trained out of you. This is why you must watch your thoughts as they arrive. Do not let them pass as law simply because they are familiar. Not every thought deserves respect. Some thoughts are old habits dressed as truths. Some are fears that have learnt to speak in your own voice. Some are desires that have become impatient and called themselves necessities. Your task is not to obey the mind. Your task is to govern it by reason. Ask of each thought, is this within my control? Is this consistent with virtue? Is this helping me act well now? If it is not, let it go. You will notice how much unnecessary pain comes from expecting what is not promised. You expect people to understand you, they may not. You expect rewards to come quickly, they may not. You expect effort to be noticed, it may not be. You expect fairness from those who have never trained themselves in justice. You expect calm from a world that has never offered calm as a guarantee. These expectations are the hidden chains around your mind. Release them and life becomes lighter, not easy, lighter. To release expectation is not to abandon effort. It is to work without bargaining with fate. Do your part fully. Say what is true. Make the effort. Hold your character steady. Then leave the rest to nature. This is not resignation, it is strength. A farmer does not command the rain. He prepares the ground. A sailor does not command the wind. He tends the sails. A rational being does not command the outcome. He governs his choice. That is enough for virtue. When you begin to live this way, people may call you detached. Let them. They often use that word for anyone who no longer gives them the easy reactions they expect. But true detachment is not indifference to duty. It is freedom from bondage to outcome. You still care. You still act. You still love what is honorable, but you no longer cling. You no longer beg the world to confirm your worth. You no longer make your inner peace hostage to another person's behavior. This is where many deceive themselves. They think detachment means not feeling. It does not. It means feeling without surrendering judgment. It means seeing a desire and not becoming its slave. It means seeing a loss and not declaring yourself destroyed. It means seeing praise and not inflating. It means seeing blame and not collapsing. The mind trained in reason remains steady because it does not hand its sovereignty away at the first push. You must also examine the things you call necessary. Are they truly necessary or merely familiar? Are they required for virtue or only for comfort? Do you need approval to act honorably? No. Do you need luxury to live well? No. Do you need perfect conditions to keep your mind in order? No. The soul can choose right action in any setting. This is its dignity. This is its strength. Do not insult yourself by believing that your circumstances are too difficult for integrity. Integrity was designed for difficulty. It proves itself there. When you are denied what you want, do not rush to call it failure. Ask whether the denial is training you in patience. When you are ignored, ask whether this is training you to root your worth in character rather than attention. When you are challenged, ask whether this is training you to stand firm without anger. When you are misunderstood, ask whether this is training you to do your duty without needing applause. Nothing is wasted if you use it well. Every event becomes material for virtue when judgment is disciplined. You must learn to desire only what is in accord with reason. Not every desire that rises in you deserves your support. Some desires are small and restless. Some are vain. Some are merely borrowed from the crowd. Some will make you weak before they make you happy. Desire justice. Desire self-command. Desire clarity. Desire courage. Desire to act well regardless of the scene around you. These desires are worthy because they direct you inward toward what can never be taken away. A person ruled by appetite is never satisfied because appetite has no final point. One gain leads to another demand. One comfort breeds another need. One approval breeds another fear of losing it. This is why many who have plenty still live like beggars. They are not poor in possessions. They are poor in rule over themselves. Do not join them. Ask less of the world and more of your own reason. Ask the self to become orderly. Ask the will to become steady. Ask the judgment to become clear. You will find that this asks more of you than all your ambitions combined, and it is worth more than all of them. There will be moments when you want to react immediately. Someone will slight you. Someone will delay you. Someone will misjudge you. In that moment, your training begins. Do not answer at once. Do not speak from the heat of the first impression. Pause. Breath is not your master. Anger is not your guide. Before you speak, ask what kind of person you are choosing to be, not what kind of person they are being. What kind of person you are choosing to be. This question can save your character from hours of regret. If you practice this pause often enough, you will begin to notice the gap between impression and assent. That gap is your freedom. In that gap, you are not yet ruled. In that gap, you are still a rational being capable of choice. Guard that space, respect it, train it, because once you lose it, you become mechanical. Reaction follows insult. Insult follows frustration. Frustration follows expectation, and your day passes without you ever truly directing it. So begin with the morning. Before you let the world into your mind, let reason speak first. Ask yourself what sorts of things are likely to happen today. Someone may be rude. Plans may change, your work may be interrupted, your body may feel tired, your mind may resist. A message may not arrive. A person may disappoint you. None of this is surprising. None of this is a catastrophe. Say it plainly before the day begins, and the day will have less power to catch you unprepared. You are not predicting disaster. You are preparing your judgment. Then decide in advance what is yours to protect. Your honesty, your patience, your restraint, your fairness, your courage, your refusal to lie to yourself. These belong to you more than any external success. Guard them as you would guard your own breath, because without them, no victory is meaningful. With them, even hardship becomes honorable. During the day, keep returning to the question of control. When you feel anxiety, ask what exactly you are trying to control that is not yours. When you feel envy, ask whether you have mistaken the possession of another for your own lack. When you feel anger, ask whether you are demanding that reality behave as you wish rather than as it is. When you feel sadness, ask whether you are mourning the loss of an external thing as though it were the loss of your own virtue. These questions do not erase pain by magic. They cut away confusion, and confusion is often the larger enemy. At work, this discipline is tested in plain ways. You want recognition. You want the project to succeed. You want your effort to matter. These are natural wishes, but if your peace depends on them, you have already surrendered your power. Work instead for excellence itself. Let the work be honest. Let your effort be careful. Let your word be reliable. Let your conduct be just. If the outcome comes, receive it without arrogance. If it does not, remain upright. The finished result is never the full measure of a human being. The quality of the choice is. In relationships, this teaching is even harder because the heart so easily mistakes attachment for necessity. You want to be understood. You want to be chosen. You want affection to continue, but the other person is not your possession. Their mind is not yours to command. Their feelings are not your property. Their actions may please you or wound you, yet neither determines your virtue. Love without bondage, care without clinging. Speak truth without demanding that truth always be convenient. Hold affection lightly enough that your reason remains free. This does not make you less human, it makes you more just. A just person does not use another soul as a tool for his own peace. He respects what is not his to govern. He does not say, "You must make me feel secure." He says, "I will make my judgment secure." He does not say, "You must never disappoint me." He says, "I will not make my life depend on your perfection." This is a hard standard, but it is the only one that keeps dignity intact. You may ask how such steadiness is possible when life keeps striking from every side. It is possible because the blow is not the whole story. What matters most is not the strike, but the use you make of it. Injury can make you bitter or better. Delay can make you restless or patient. Loss can make you desperate or wise. Praise can make you vain or sober. The event does not complete the sentence, your judgment completes it. This is why the cultivation of judgment is the central work. Do not be ashamed of beginning poorly. Every untrained mind begins poorly. The point is not to have been perfect yesterday. The point is to begin governing today. There is no dignity in self-pity. There is dignity in correction. When you catch yourself making a false judgment, do not dramatize it. Correct it, quietly, firmly, again and again. This is how strength is built, not in grand declarations, in repeated refusals to lie to yourself. At midday or whenever you can, check your mind. Ask where you have drifted. Ask whether you have started to worship what is external. Ask whether you have started to resent what is outside your power. Ask whether you have allowed your thoughts to become lazy. If so, return. There is no shame in return. There is shame only in surrendering the self to its first impulse and calling that a life. A life must be chosen. A life must be governed. Otherwise, it is only a sequence of reactions. In the evening, review the day with complete honesty. Where did you assent too quickly? Where did you let irritation speak for you? Where did you cling to an outcome? Where did you fail to distinguish between what was yours and what was not? Where did you act well despite discomfort? Where did you remain just? Where did you keep silence when silence was wiser? Where did you speak too soon? This examination is not for punishment, it is for training. A person who does not review himself remains forever at the mercy of habit. You must also practice voluntary discomfort. Not because pain is good in itself, but because comfort trains softness when left unchecked. Deny yourself small comforts from time to time. Eat more simply. Use less. Sit with inconvenience without complaint. Walk without music. Endure cold. Rise earlier. Keep your hands from constant seeking. This teaches the body that it is not the ruler. It teaches the mind that it can remain free without constant pleasure. And it reminds you that your happiness was never meant to depend on luxury. When discomfort comes uninvited, as it surely will, you will then be less shocked by it. You will say, I have met this before in training. It is not new. It is not a reason to abandon reason. This is how the soul gains firmness, not by avoiding trial, by meeting manageable trials on purpose so that greater trials do not break you. You must be especially careful with fear. Fear distorts judgment by making future things seem present and terrible before they arrive. It makes you suffer twice, once in imagination, once in reality, if reality even brings the feared thing at all. When fear appears, do not worship it. Identify what it is saying, then return to what is true now. Is the feared event happening now? No. Then do not live as if it is. Is the feared event within your control? No. Then do not build your peace upon it. Is your present duty clear? Yes. Then do that duty. This returns us to the center. The present moment is where reason acts. Not yesterday, not next month, not in the dream of a future self who has no weakness. Right now. This is the only place where your choice exists. And because choice exists now, freedom exists now. You do not need to conquer your whole life at once. You need to govern the moment before you. Then the next. Then the next. That is enough. The whole forest is crossed one step at a time. The mind that wants everything at once will always be disappointed. The mind that seeks to act rightly now will always have work to do, and therefore will always have dignity. Do not ask for a life without difficulty. Ask for a mind that remains just within difficulty. That is a better request. That is a freer request. And that is the only one that belongs to a philosopher in action. When the world gives you uncertainty, do not curse it. Uncertainty is the condition of human life. If you demand certainty before you will act, you will do nothing worthy. You will sit and wait for a safety that never comes. But if you accept uncertainty, you can act with courage. You can make choices without guarantee. You can speak the truth even when the result is unknown. You can do your duty without needing to see the end. This is not weakness. This is the highest use of reason. You do not need life to become perfectly arranged before you can be calm. Calm is not the reward of arrangement. It is the fruit of right judgment. If you keep chasing a guaranteed future, you will keep missing the present, and the present is where your life is being spent. Every hour wasted in resentment or fear is an hour handed away from yourself. Do not hand away another hour. Bring yourself back. The ordinary person wants the world to be manageable before he becomes steady. The disciplined person becomes steady so that whatever the world gives him can be managed with wisdom. This is the difference between being led and leading yourself. One waits to be rescued. The other begins the work of rescue from within, and do not think this is pride, it is duty. You owe yourself a governed mind. You owe your place among human beings a just and rational response. There will still be pain. Stoicism does not promise the removal of all trouble. It promises a better use of trouble. The body can suffer. The mind can be tested. Loss can arrive. People can leave. Your plans can fail. Yet none of that forces your soul into dishonor unless you consent to dishonor. That is the hard truth most people avoid. They want a philosophy that protects comfort. You need a philosophy that protects virtue. Virtue is what remains when comfort is gone. So tell yourself the truth each day. You are not here to control the entire world. You are here to control your judgment. You are not here to demand that life obey your preferences. You are here to meet life with reason. You are not here to become rich in possessions and poor in spirit. You are here to become rich in self-command. You are not here to be admired by many and mastered by none. You are here to become the kind of person who can be trusted with his own mind. That is why detachment matters, not because the world is worthless, but because the world is not yours to own in the way you keep trying to own it. Let things come and go without making your character come and go with them. Let praise arrive without dependence. Let criticism arrive without collapse. Let opportunity arrive without greed. Let loss arrive without self-abandonment. Let each thing reveal whether your judgment is strong enough to remain steady. And if you fail today, do not make failure into an identity. That is another false judgment. You are not your lapse. You are the one who can see the lapse and correct it. Return immediately. Do not wait for a better mood. Do not wait for ideal conditions. Do not wait to feel inspired. Reason does not wait for convenience. It acts because it must. And because it acts, life becomes ordered. Tonight, before sleep, examine yourself again. Ask whether you gave away your peace for something outside your power. Ask whether you let another person's behavior dictate your inner state. Ask whether your desires were clean or restless. Ask whether you made room for fear where judgment should have stood. Ask whether you were patient. Ask whether you were honest. Ask whether you were just. Ask whether you lived as though your mind belonged to you. This is not a ritual. It is a reckoning. If you keep doing this work slowly and faithfully, your life will change in ways the crowd cannot understand. You will become harder to provoke. You will become less needy. You will become less theatrical in pain. You will stop begging the world to confirm what virtue already knows. You will feel less torn by what others think because you will have something stronger than opinion to stand on. You will begin to possess yourself. This is the freedom that comes from mastering judgment. It does not make you powerful over events. It makes you powerful over yourself. And that is the only power that is truly yours. The rest is borrowed. The rest is temporary. The rest can vanish while you are still reaching for it. But a disciplined judgment remains with you in the storm, in the quiet, in success, in humiliation, in youth, in age, in loss, in waiting, in work and in death. It is the one possession that cannot be stolen if you do not surrender it. So stop chasing what is beyond your command as though it were the measure of your life. It is not. Begin with the judgment in your own mind. Clean it, test it, refuse falsehood, reject needless fear, release expectation, choose virtue, accept what comes, do your duty, return when you drift. And do this again tomorrow, then again the next day. This is how freedom is built. This is how detachment becomes strength. This is how a human being stops living as a slave to appearances and begins living as a rational soul. Do not waste the rest of this day in complaint. Do not give your mind away to what is outside your power. Take it back. Right now, let the world be what it is. Let other people be what they are. Let fortune turn as it will. Your task is not to command all of that. Your task is to remain just, disciplined, and clear within it. That is enough. That has always been enough, and if you are willing to do that, then nothing outside you can truly take your peace, because your peace will no longer be built on what can be taken. Number 2. Release every expectation that weakens your rational inner freedom. There is a quiet chain that binds more people than failure ever could. It cannot be seen, yet it governs their moods from sunrise until sleep. It is not made of iron, it is made of expectation. The belief that life must unfold according to personal desire before the mind is allowed to remain peaceful. The belief that other people owe agreement, gratitude, affection, or fairness. The belief that every sincere effort deserves immediate reward. This chain is willingly worn, and because it is willingly worn, it can also be removed. Look carefully at your own day. How many moments of disappointment began long before anything actually happened? You imagined a conversation that had not yet taken place. You expected appreciation before your work was even finished. You assumed someone would understand your intentions without being told. You quietly demanded that events follow the path your mind had already designed. Then reality chose another direction, and you called reality the enemy. Reality was never your enemy. Your expectation was. A disciplined mind does not suffer because the world refuses to obey it. A disciplined mind understands from the beginning that the world was never placed under its command. The only true authority you possess is over the way you meet each moment. Everything else moves according to causes larger than your personal wishes. The weather does not ask permission before changing. Time does not pause because you are unprepared. Other people do not surrender their judgment simply because you desire it. Once you understand this completely, much of what you have called suffering begins to lose its foundation. Most expectations are hidden. They disguise themselves as reasonable hopes. They whisper quietly until they become demands without your knowledge. You expect your effort to be recognized. You expect kindness to always be returned with kindness. You expect your plans to remain undisturbed. You expect those closest to you to always understand your silence. You expect progress to arrive without long seasons of uncertainty. These expectations seem harmless because they feel familiar. Yet familiarity does not make them wise. Each expectation quietly hands your peace to something outside your governance. The rational person learns to notice this exchange before it happens. Every time your mind says, "Things must happen this way before I can remain calm," you have already surrendered your freedom. Peace that depends upon conditions is not peace at all. It is merely comfort waiting to disappear. This realization is difficult because it asks you to abandon a lifelong habit. You have been taught to believe that satisfaction arrives when enough external pieces finally fall into place. Yet examine your own experience honestly. Every fulfilled expectation quickly makes room for another. One success demands a greater success. One possession invites the desire for another. One achievement becomes yesterday's memory before the heart invents a fresh hunger. There is no lasting rest for the person whose contentment depends upon circumstances. The problem is not desire itself. The problem is allowing desire to become your ruler. Desire should obey reason, not replace it. There is nothing wrong with working toward worthy goals. There is everything wrong with believing your character cannot remain steady unless those goals are achieved. Consider how easily expectation changes your perception of ordinary events. A delayed reply becomes rejection. A criticism becomes humiliation. A mistake becomes proof of personal failure. None of these conclusions belong to the event itself. They are judgments added afterward by an impatient mind searching for certainty where none exists. A disciplined soul refuses to hurry toward these conclusions. It waits, it examines, It asks whether the impression deserves acceptance or correction. This habit cannot be formed through occasional effort. It must become your daily discipline. Before speaking each morning, spend several quiet moments examining the expectations already waiting inside your mind. Ask yourself what you are secretly demanding from the day. Are you demanding uninterrupted comfort? Are you demanding admiration? Are you demanding success before honest labor? Are you demanding that everyone around you behave according to your preferences? Once these expectations become visible, many of them immediately lose their power. Replace each demand with a better commitment. Instead of expecting the day to be easy, commit to remaining reasonable. Instead of expecting praise, commit to honest work. Instead of expecting agreement, commit to speaking truthfully. Instead of expecting certainty, commit to acting wisely despite uncertainty. Notice the difference. The first set depends upon fortune. The second depends upon character. This shift changes everything because your attention returns to what truly belongs to you. Your purpose is no longer to arrange the world into perfect order. Your purpose becomes arranging your own judgment into harmony with reason. This task is demanding enough to occupy an entire lifetime. Whenever disappointment appears, pause before blaming circumstances. Ask a different question. Which expectation has just been exposed? Every disappointment reveals an attachment that previously remained hidden. Instead of treating disappointment as an enemy, receive it as instruction. It has shown you where your freedom was quietly surrendered. Suppose someone fails to keep a promise. Your first impulse may be frustration, but frustration alone teaches nothing. Examine the expectation beneath it. Perhaps you assumed another person's reliability could be guaranteed. It cannot. You may encourage honesty. You may appreciate faithfulness. You may choose carefully whom to trust. Yet another person's choices remain outside your command. Your responsibility begins only after their choice has already been made. Will you respond with fairness or resentment? Will you preserve your character or imitate their failure? That decision still belongs entirely to you. The same examination applies to success. Many people become prisoners of expectation precisely because they achieve what they wanted. They begin believing future victories must always resemble previous ones. They become anxious about protecting reputation instead of strengthening character. They no longer pursue excellence for its own sake. They pursue confirmation of an identity built upon unstable foundations. A rational person accepts success without attaching identity to it. Today's achievement does not guarantee tomorrow's result. It simply offers another opportunity to practice gratitude without pride and diligence without complacency. Freedom grows wherever unnecessary expectation disappears. This freedom does not make you passive. On the contrary, it allows stronger action because your effort is no longer weakened by fear of disappointment. When your worth is no longer tied to results, you become capable of sustained labor without emotional exhaustion. You can attempt difficult tasks because failure cannot diminish virtue. You can endure delays because patience remains within your power. You can continue speaking honestly because another person's approval is no longer your reward. This is genuine independence, not isolation from humanity, but liberation from emotional dependence upon circumstances. Practice another discipline throughout the day. Whenever your thoughts begin racing toward future outcomes, gently return them to present responsibilities. Ask only one question. What is the most reasonable action available right now? Do not concern yourself with rewards that have not yet arrived. They belong to another moment. Your duty belongs to this one. If your work requires concentration, then concentrate completely. If someone needs your attention, give it sincerely. If correction is necessary, accept it without defensiveness. If rest becomes appropriate, rest without guilt. The present always contains sufficient work for the disciplined mind. Anxiety enters only when imagination abandons present duty in search of imagined futures. Many people spend years negotiating with events that have not happened. They rehearse disappointment before disappointment arrives. They celebrate victories before effort has been completed. They exhaust themselves living inside possibilities while neglecting reality. Reason always calls you back. Stand where your feet already are. Meet the task already before you. Improve the judgment you are using at this very moment. Nothing else deserves greater urgency. There will be occasions when expectations return despite your training. Old habits rarely disappear without resistance. Do not become discouraged. Notice them without anger. Correct them without self-contempt. The disciplined life is built through countless quiet corrections rather than dramatic moments of perfection. Every correction strengthens your governing faculty. Every honest examination weakens illusion. Every refusal to complain deepens freedom. At the close of each day, examine not what fortune provided, but how faithfully you governed yourself. Ask whether you expected too much from people who possess the same weaknesses you are still overcoming. Ask whether comfort became more important than integrity. Ask whether delayed results tempted you toward bitterness. Ask whether your peace remained dependent upon conditions that never truly belonged to you. Do not answer these questions to accuse yourself. Answer them to improve tomorrow's judgment. This evening examination becomes one of your greatest teachers because it reveals patterns invisible during hurried living. You begin recognizing the same expectations appearing in different disguises. You notice recurring disappointments built upon identical assumptions. You discover that many external conflicts actually began within your own unexamined demands. Once seen clearly, they lose much of their authority. There is another practice worthy of your attention. Deliberately enter ordinary situations without expecting anything in return. Offer kindness without waiting for gratitude. Perform your work without anticipating applause. Listen carefully without insisting upon agreement. Help where help is appropriate without secretly bargaining for future recognition. These simple acts train the soul to act from virtue rather than transaction. The undisciplined mind always asks what it will receive. The disciplined mind asks only whether its action is just. That difference marks the beginning of genuine inner freedom. As this discipline deepens, relationships become healthier because they are no longer burdened by invisible demands. You stop measuring every conversation according to personal satisfaction. You stop interpreting every disagreement as disrespect. You stop requiring others to carry responsibilities that belong to your own judgment. You become easier to trust because your steadiness no longer depends upon constant reassurance. You become easier to respect because your actions remain guided by principle instead of changing emotions. You become calmer because your peace has finally been relocated from uncertain events to reliable character. Remember that expectation often disguises itself as control. You imagine that if you predict enough outcomes, prepare enough plans, or worry long enough, disappointment can somehow be prevented. Yet worry has never altered reality. It merely exhausts the mind before reality arrives. Preparation belongs to reason. Anxiety belongs to imagination. Learn the difference carefully. Prepare through thoughtful action. Release everything beyond thoughtful action. Once preparation has reached its proper limit, continued mental struggle serves no useful purpose. It only steals strength from today's responsibilities. You possess no authority over tomorrow's events. You possess complete responsibility for today's judgment. That responsibility is enough. Do not envy those who appear to receive effortless success. You cannot see the condition of another person's governing mind. Wealth may conceal dependence. Recognition may conceal fear. Comfort may conceal weakness. Judge no life by appearances alone. Judge only whether your own character continues moving toward wisdom. Comparison itself often grows from expectation. You expect your path to resemble another person's path. You expect equal timing, equal opportunities, equal rewards. Nature has promised none of these things. It has offered something far greater. The opportunity to become just, regardless of circumstance. The opportunity to remain truthful, regardless of pressure. The opportunity to exercise self-command, regardless of temptation. These opportunities exist every single day. No one can remove them from you. As long as reason remains available, the path toward freedom remains open. Therefore, release every expectation that demands the world become different before you permit yourself to become better. That bargain has delayed enough lives already. Improvement begins the moment you stop negotiating with fortune and begin governing your own mind. Rise tomorrow with fewer demands upon the world and greater demands upon your character. Let your first concern be the quality of your judgments. Let your second concern be the integrity of your actions. Allow everything else to unfold according to its own nature. Then, regardless of praise or criticism, gain or loss, certainty or uncertainty, you will possess something that cannot be granted by fortune and cannot be taken away by misfortune. You will possess a mind that has learned to stand firmly within itself, and that is the beginning of rational inner freedom. Number 3. Accept every event with calm, disciplined reason and courage. Stop resisting what has already happened. That resistance is where your suffering multiplies. The event itself is one thing. Your refusal to meet it is another. The loss is one thing. The panic you add to it is another. The delay is one thing. The irritation you feed from it is another. The body has been struck before the mind has understood the blow, and then the mind begins to insult itself by calling the blow unbearable. That is how weakness is made, not by fate alone, by the judgment that fate has become too much for a rational being. You have lived long enough to know this truth, and still too often pretend otherwise. You know that life changes without asking. You know that people disappoint. You know that plans break. You know that the body tires. You know that praise turns cold. You know that fear grows when imagination is left unchecked. None of this is surprising. What is surprising is how often the mind behaves as though it has been personally betrayed by the nature of life itself. But life has not betrayed you. It has simply remained what it has always been: changeable, brief, unowned, a field for judgment, not a servant to desire. The task is not to persuade life to be gentle. The task is to become steady enough to meet it as it is. This is where calm reason begins, not in the absence of difficulty, in the presence of difficulty without surrender. Calm reason does not mean a dull heart. It means a mind that has learned to pause before it grants power to an impression. It means a soul that can say, "This has happened, but it does not yet have authority over me." It means courage that is not loud, and discipline that does not need applause. Most people think they are suffering from events. They are not. They are suffering from their own refusal to interpret events with discipline. A sudden loss becomes an identity. A setback becomes humiliation. A harsh word becomes proof of worthlessness. A missed opportunity becomes a prophecy of ruin. None of these interpretations are required by the facts. They are judgments, and judgments can be trained. This is why your mind must be examined with the same seriousness you would give to a serious wound. If you leave false judgments untouched, they infect everything they touch. Begin with the morning. Before the day has a chance to drag you by the sleeve, take a few quiet moments and prepare your mind for what belongs to human life. Tell yourself plainly that you will meet people who act without wisdom. Tell yourself that plans may change. Tell yourself that your body may not obey every wish. Tell yourself that some duties will be difficult. Tell yourself that the day may present loss, delay, confusion, or insult. Not to make yourself anxious, but to strip surprise of its power. A mind that is prepared does not panic when reality appears. It recognizes what was already understood. This preparation is not pessimism, it is honesty. There is a great difference. The pessimistic person says nothing good can be trusted. The disciplined person says nothing external can be guaranteed, so my goodness must not depend upon it. That is a stronger statement. It protects the soul. It stops the foolish habit of demanding certainty from a world that has never promised it. When the first difficulty arrives, do not rush to judge it as good or bad for your life. First ask what it is. Then ask what is up to you. Then ask what virtue requires. The event is given. Your judgment is chosen. The event may involve another person's behavior, but their behavior is not your property. The event may involve your body, but the body is not the ruler of your soul. The event may involve money, time, reputation, or comfort, but none of these are the seat of moral worth. Only your use of them is. That is the point most people avoid because it leaves them no place to hide. To accept every event with calm, disciplined reason is not to approve every event. It is not to praise injustice, reward error, or become passive in the face of duty. It is to recognize the event as material and then decide how a rational being should use that material. A broken plan is not a reason to break your character. A harsh conversation is not a reason to abandon fairness. A public embarrassment is not a reason to lie. A painful change is not a reason to become bitter. Acceptance means you stop wasting force on resistance to the fact itself and put that force into the only place where it can do good, your own judgment and action. Courage enters here. Not the courage of speeches, the courage of obedience to reason when reason is inconvenient. It is easy to speak of strength while life is favorable. It is easy to call yourself calm when nothing threatens your comfort. The real test comes when you are challenged and you still choose the just response. Courage is not the absence of fear, it is the refusal to make fear the ruler of choice. Fear will speak. Let it speak. Then answer with what is true. Fear may warn you, it may not command you. The rational faculty remains higher than the trembling of the body or the agitation of the imagination. You have likely noticed that much of your complaint is not about the event itself, but about the gap between what you wanted and what occurred. This gap is where disturbance grows. The mind says, it should not be this way, but should according to whom? According to desire? According to habit? According to comfort? Reality owes none of those a debt. A wiser question is this: given that it is this way, how do I remain just, firm, and clear? This question does not deny pain. It uses pain as a place to practice virtue. That is the nobler use. When you are interrupted, do not react as if your whole order has been destroyed. It has not. Your order is inside you if you have built it well. When you are misunderstood, do not collapse into resentment. The opinions of others are not the measure of your worth. When you are delayed, do not treat time itself as an enemy. Time is simply the field in which patience can be trained. When you lose something, ask whether you had mistaken possession for permanence. Everything borrowed from fortune was always temporary. The rational person does not pretend otherwise. There is a great difference between pain and corruption. Pain may visit any human being. Corruption comes when you let pain persuade you to dishonor yourself. A person can be grieving and still remain just. A person can be tired and still remain honorable. A person can be frightened and still refuse cowardice. This is the dignity of the human faculty. It can stand upright in adverse conditions. It can preserve its shape while the world shifts around it. It can say, you may touch my circumstances, but you will not govern my assent. Practice that separation constantly. Ask of every event, what part of this belongs to me? My judgment belongs to me. My choice belongs to me. My willingness to act well belongs to me. The behavior of others does not. The outcome does not. The speed of events does not. The final arrangement does not. Once you learn this distinction, life becomes cleaner. Not easy, cleaner. You stop fighting battles you cannot win. You stop expecting the outside world to protect your peace. You stop making yourself dependent on what was never yours to command. Some people call this coldness. They do so because they have never learned the difference between dependence and care. To care well is to meet each event with reason and justice. To depend badly is to require the event to soothe you before you can be steady. The first is strength. The second is fragility. Do not confuse them. The more a person depends upon favorable circumstances, the less free he becomes. The more a person can accept circumstances while preserving his virtue, the more free he becomes. Freedom is not getting your way. Freedom is remaining governed by reason regardless of what way reality turns. This is why you must train yourself in small matters before larger ones arrive. If you can remain calm when the line is long, you are learning. If you can remain patient when a message is unanswered, you are learning. If you can remain fair when someone takes credit, you are learning. If you can remain disciplined when your plans are altered, you are learning. Every small inconvenience is practice for greater ones. Do not waste them by complaining. Use them. Each one is a chance to strengthen the part of you that can endure without becoming lesser. When a difficult event appears, do not immediately ask why it happened to you. That question often serves vanity more than wisdom. Ask instead what use is available now. Ask how this event can train patience, courage, justice, or self-command. Ask what false belief it has exposed. Ask what attachment it has revealed. Ask whether you have been living as though comfort were a right. It is not. Ask whether you have been living as though control over others were possible. It is not. Ask whether you have been living as though no loss could ever come. That is childish. A mature mind accepts the conditions of mortal life and still chooses the good. You will be tested in your relationships by this principle more than anywhere else. Another person may disappoint you. They may be unfair. They may fail to understand. They may leave. They may stay and still not meet your expectations. Your first duty is not to demand that they become different. Your first duty is to preserve your own justice. Speak plainly, act honorably, refuse bitterness, refuse revenge in thought, refuse the temptation to become like what offended you. If their character is poor, your own character must not sink lower in response. That would be surrender, not justice. At work, the same law applies. A project may fail, a superior may be difficult, a colleague may be careless, recognition may not come. None of this tells you how to govern yourself. The job of the rational mind is to act well in whatever conditions are present. Do your work faithfully. Correct what can be corrected. Accept what cannot. A person who only performs when rewarded is not free. He is bribed by fortune. But the person who does what is right because it is right carries his reward within his own action. And when your own body becomes the source of difficulty, the discipline deepens. Pain, fatigue, weakness, aging, and illness may place limits before you. Do not add the mistake of believing that these limits erase your dignity. The body is a companion, not a master. It may call for care. It may require rest. It may impose delay. Still, the mind can remain just, grateful, and governed by reason. Even in bodily weakness, the ruling faculty can choose not to be weak in character. That is a victory no external hardship can take away. A useful practice is to pause whenever you feel disturbance and ask one simple question: is this event within my power? If it is within your power, act without delay and without drama. If it is not within your power, stop trying to command it. This question cleans the mind like water cleans a wound. It separates useful action from useless resistance. Many of your storms dissolve once you stop trying to control what has never belonged to you. Another practice is to rehearse loss before it arrives. Do this not to invite sorrow, but to remove illusion. Remind yourself that everything external can be changed or removed. The point is not to become fearful. The point is to become prepared. The prepared mind is less shocked, less needy, and less dependent on the illusion that what is temporary must remain. When loss comes after such preparation, you are less likely to betray yourself through panic. At the end of the day, examine your responses. Where did you accept reality with dignity? Where did you resist it with complaint? Where did you act from reason? Where did you react from impulse? Where did you confuse discomfort with harm? Where did you prove that your judgment still needs training? This evening review is not a performance, it is a laboratory. It shows you where the mind was strong and where it still trembled. Without this examination, the same errors will return tomorrow wearing different clothes. Do not ask for a life without trials. Ask for a mind that meets trials without disgrace. That is a wiser request. That is a freer request. Trials reveal whether your philosophy is real or borrowed. They show whether you speak of discipline only when life is easy. They expose whether your courage is genuine or decorative. A calm face in comfort means little. A calm judgment under pressure means everything. You do not have to master the whole world. You must master the point where the world meets your judgment. That is enough work for one lifetime. It is also the only work that gives lasting freedom. Events will continue to arise. Some will be pleasant, some will be painful, some will be confusing, some will be unjust. Your duty is not to control the pattern. Your duty is to respond to each one as a rational and courageous human being. That is where your power lives. So when the next event arrives, and it will arrive, do not meet it with complaint. Meet it with clarity. Say to yourself, this is here. What does reason require now? Then obey the answer. If action is needed, act. If patience is needed, wait. If speech is needed, speak. If silence is wiser, be silent. If endurance is required, endure. If acceptance is all that remains, accept without lowering your character. This is how a person becomes steady. This is how suffering loses its authority. This is how courage becomes ordinary rather than exceptional. Not by escaping life, but by facing it with disciplined reason. The world will remain changeable. You need not remain changeable with it. Stand where virtue stands. Let events come. Let them pass. Let them teach you. Let them test you. Let them reveal whether you have finally learned that nothing outside your judgment can compel your soul unless you allow it. And do not allow it. Number 4. Govern your desires through daily examination and honest self-command. Your life is shaped less by what you possess than by what you constantly pursue. Every day your desires move before you like unseen rulers, directing your attention, your emotions, your choices, and your peace. Most people believe they are making free decisions, yet they rarely stop to ask a simple question. Who is commanding these desires? Have they been examined by reason, or have they simply been inherited from habit, comfort, fear, and imitation? A person who never investigates this question may appear successful to the world while remaining a servant within. The first task of a disciplined mind is not to destroy desire, but to place it under proper authority. Desire has a rightful place in human life, but it was never meant to sit upon the throne of judgment. When desire governs, reason becomes its servant. Every inconvenience becomes unbearable. Every delay becomes an insult. Every temptation becomes persuasive. Every disappointment becomes a personal wound. Yet when reason governs, desire becomes orderly. It learns patience. It learns restraint. It learns to seek only what strengthens character instead of weakening it. Look honestly at your own thoughts from the moment you wake. Before your feet touch the ground, countless desires have already begun speaking. You may desire comfort over effort. You may desire praise before honest work. You may desire certainty before action. You may desire ease instead of discipline. These voices arrive so quickly that most people mistake them for their own identity. They obey without examination. They follow every impulse simply because it appeared first. This is where inner freedom begins to disappear. The rational mind does not accept the first impulse as its master. It pauses, it questions, it asks whether this desire deserves obedience or correction. This pause is not hesitation born from fear, it is deliberate government. It is the refusal to surrender authority over your own soul. You must become suspicious of every desire that promises immediate satisfaction while demanding long-term weakness. Such desires rarely announce themselves honestly. They present themselves as harmless rewards. They say you deserve another hour of comfort instead of duty. They encourage another complaint instead of patient endurance. They persuade you to postpone difficult conversations. They urge you to avoid honest correction because pride fears discomfort. Each small surrender trains the will toward future surrender. Every unchecked appetite quietly teaches the mind that self-command is optional. No person loses mastery all at once. It happens through repeated permission. One excuse prepares another. One indulgence strengthens the next. One neglected examination becomes a habit of neglect. Eventually, the person believes they are choosing freely while merely following the strongest impulse of the moment. The disciplined life reverses this process through daily examination. Before the demands of the day scatter your attention, sit quietly with yourself. Do not begin by asking what you hope to accomplish. Begin by asking what within you must be governed. Which desire is most likely to pull your judgment away from reason today? Is it the desire to avoid effort? The desire to be admired? The desire to control another person's opinion? The desire to protect comfort at every cost? Name it clearly. A hidden desire grows stronger through secrecy. A recognized desire becomes easier to govern. Once you have identified it, do not condemn yourself for possessing it. Human nature contains many impulses that require education. The presence of temptation is not failure. Failure begins only when temptation receives unquestioned obedience. Your responsibility is not to erase human nature, but to cultivate it until reason becomes its guide. Carry this awareness into ordinary moments. When you reach for unnecessary distraction while meaningful work remains unfinished, stop for a moment. Ask whether this action serves your highest faculty or merely satisfies temporary restlessness. When you feel compelled to answer criticism immediately, examine whether your response arises from justice or wounded pride. When you long to possess something simply because another person possesses it, ask whether your judgment has become dependent upon comparison rather than virtue. These brief examinations gradually transform the entire direction of your day. Many people spend years trying to change external habits without first changing the desires that produce them. They fight visible actions while leaving invisible motives untouched. This rarely succeeds because behavior always follows what the heart secretly values. If comfort remains your highest desire, discipline will always feel like punishment. If approval remains your greatest treasure, honesty will become frightening. If pleasure becomes your constant aim, endurance will seem unnecessary. The deeper work is not changing isolated actions. The deeper work is educating desire itself. Teach yourself to desire what cannot corrupt you. Desire a mind that remains truthful when lying appears convenient. Desire patience when haste promises easier results. Desire fairness even when unfairness appears profitable. Desire courage more than safety whenever duty demands courage. These desires strengthen the governing part of the soul instead of weakening it. Notice how different such a life becomes. External success may still arrive or disappear. Comfort may come or leave. Praise may increase or fade. Yet your deepest aspirations remain untouched because they depend upon your own choices rather than changing circumstances. This is genuine security. It cannot be purchased. It cannot be borrowed. It must be cultivated every day. Throughout your day, another practice deserves careful attention. Watch the language your mind uses when desire speaks. It often disguises preference as necessity. It says, "I need this recognition." It says, "I cannot be peaceful until this problem disappears." It says, "Everything depends upon this outcome." Examine these claims carefully. Very few things are genuine necessities for a disciplined soul. Character requires honesty. Reason requires attention. Justice requires action. Everything else deserves careful examination before receiving your loyalty. Whenever desire begins exaggerating its importance, return to simple questions. Will possessing this make me more just? Will obtaining this improve my judgment? Will losing this prevent me from acting honorably? If the answer is no, desire has been asking for greater authority than it deserves. Withdraw that authority. The mind becomes lighter each time unnecessary demands are removed. Do not imagine that governing desire means living without joy. Quite the opposite. The person ruled by appetite rarely experiences lasting contentment because satisfaction constantly escapes into the future. Every achievement immediately creates another craving. Every fulfilled wish invents another condition for happiness. The disciplined person discovers satisfaction in right action itself. A completed duty carries quiet contentment. An honest conversation carries inward peace. A restrained reaction leaves lasting dignity. These rewards remain available every day because they arise from conduct rather than circumstance. There will be moments when desire speaks with unusual force. It may promise relief from loneliness through unhealthy dependence. It may promise confidence through reputation. It may promise importance through possessions. It may promise peace through complete control over uncertain events. Listen carefully without believing every promise. Desire often mistakes possession for fulfillment. Reason knows they are different. The mind that has practiced honest examination recognizes this difference before acting. You should also examine the desires hidden beneath your disappointments. Whenever frustration appears, ask what desire has just been denied. Perhaps you desired constant appreciation. Perhaps you desired perfect certainty before making a decision. Perhaps you desired immediate progress without patient repetition. Disappointment often reveals values that have escaped examination. Receive these moments as instruction rather than defeat. Each disappointment exposes another place where reason can restore proper order. This work requires honesty deeper than public reputation. It is possible to appear disciplined while secretly serving vanity. It is possible to appear generous while quietly expecting admiration. It is possible to appear calm while inwardly demanding constant control. Therefore, your examination must concern motives as much as actions. Ask yourself difficult questions without searching for comfortable answers. Did I act from justice or from the desire to be noticed? Did I remain silent from wisdom or from fear? Did I work diligently because excellence is worthy, or because I feared criticism? Only honest answers strengthen the soul. Comforting illusions never improve character. At midday, pause briefly before continuing your responsibilities. Do not measure your progress by completed tasks alone. Measure it by the condition of your governing mind. Have your desires remained obedient to reason, or have they quietly reclaimed authority? Has irritation entered because events refused your preferences? Has impatience grown because success arrived slowly? Has envy appeared because another person's fortune distracted you from your own duty? Notice these movements early. Small corrections prevent larger failures. A neglected impulse often becomes tomorrow's habit. The disciplined person refuses to leave the inner life unattended for long. Another valuable exercise is to practice voluntary restraint in ordinary pleasures. Occasionally decline something that is available simply to remind yourself that choice belongs to reason rather than appetite. Eat enough instead of too much. Speak less when unnecessary words seek attention. Delay small comforts without complaint. Leave certain desires unanswered merely to prove they are not your masters. These exercises are not punishments. They are demonstrations of freedom. Each act of voluntary restraint reminds the soul that it possesses authority over itself. The strongest person is not the one who can acquire everything desired. The strongest person is the one who can refuse unnecessary desires without inner conflict. There is profound dignity in this ability. Observe also how desires influence relationships. Many disappointments between people arise because hidden demands replace genuine goodwill. One person expects constant agreement, another expects continual reassurance, another seeks gratitude as payment for kindness. These expectations transform relationships into transactions instead of opportunities to practice justice, patience, and understanding. Govern your own desires before judging another person's conduct. Ask whether your disappointment began because virtue was violated or because preference was denied. This distinction protects both wisdom and fairness. Even ambition deserves examination. There is nothing dishonorable about striving toward worthwhile goals, yet ambition becomes dangerous whenever achievement becomes more valuable than integrity. If success requires abandoning honesty, success has already become failure. If advancement demands injustice, advancement has lost all worth. Let every aspiration pass through the judgment of reason before receiving your commitment. The evening offers your greatest opportunity for honest self-command. When the day becomes quiet, sit with yourself without distraction. Review not merely what happened, but who you became while events unfolded. Where did desire overrule judgment? Where did comfort receive greater respect than duty? Where did fear disguise itself as wisdom? Where did pride silence necessary correction? Where did reason quietly prevail despite temptation? Answer each question with accuracy rather than emotion. You are not conducting a trial. You are conducting training. Each truthful observation becomes material for tomorrow's improvement. Never finish this examination by condemning yourself. Condemnation often feeds vanity as much as praise because both remain fixed upon the self. Instead, finish with resolution. Identify one desire requiring firmer government tomorrow. Carry that intention into sleep. Rise prepared to continue the work. Understand that self-command is never completed. Each day presents fresh opportunities for discipline because human life continually presents new impressions, new temptations, new comforts, and new fears. The wise person does not resent this reality. Continuous practice is the natural condition of a rational being. Just as the body requires repeated movement to remain strong, judgment requires repeated examination to remain clear. One neglected day may not destroy discipline. Many neglected days quietly reshape character. Therefore, return daily. Return patiently. Return honestly. There is no greater victory than bringing the unruly parts of yourself into agreement with reason. The crowd may admire visible accomplishments. The disciplined soul values invisible government. No applause is necessary when conscience remains peaceful. No audience is required when integrity quietly directs every choice. Remember this whenever desire promises an easier road. Ease is not always the companion of wisdom. Difficulty is not always the sign of misfortune. Often the harder path is simply the path where reason asks you to become stronger than yesterday. Accept that invitation willingly. Let every desire stand before the court of your judgment before receiving permission to rule your actions. Choose only those desires that deepen justice, strengthen courage, increase self-command, and preserve the freedom of your governing mind. Everything else may ask for your attention. Nothing else deserves your obedience. When your desires finally learn to follow reason instead of leading it, your days become simpler without becoming smaller. Your actions gain consistency because they no longer change with every passing impulse. Your relationships become steadier because they are guided by principle instead of appetite. Your mind grows quieter because fewer internal conflicts remain unresolved. This is the quiet strength of honest self-command. It is built through daily examination. It is protected through unwavering sincerity. It belongs to every person willing to govern themselves before attempting to govern anything else. Number 5. Reject emotional dependence and strengthen unwavering inner self-respect. There is a form of weakness that rarely announces itself openly. It hides behind affection, loyalty, ambition, kindness, and even love. It persuades you that your peace depends upon another person's approval, another person's presence, another person's gratitude, or another person's understanding. At first it feels harmless because it resembles closeness. Yet if your calm disappears whenever another mind changes, then your peace has never truly belonged to you. You have quietly placed the government of your inner life into hands that were never meant to carry it. Look honestly at the moments that disturb you most. Is it truly the event that unsettles you, or is it the meaning you have attached to another person's opinion? A delayed message becomes a judgment of your worth. A cold expression becomes evidence that you have failed. A disagreement becomes proof that you are no longer valued. A lack of recognition becomes an accusation against your character. None of these conclusions arise from reason. They arise from dependence. They arise because your own judgment has stopped being the highest authority in your life. The rational mind cannot remain free while it waits for permission from the world to feel complete. Every time you seek your value in another person's response, you surrender something that belongs only to you. You begin measuring yourself by standards that change from one moment to the next. Praise lifts you, criticism crushes you, attention gives you confidence, silence steals it away. You become like a ship without its own direction, carried wherever the winds of opinion decide to blow. This is not the life of a disciplined soul. Your worth cannot be entrusted to unstable things without becoming unstable itself. You must learn to separate care from dependence. These are not the same. A wise person cares deeply for family, friends, neighbors, and fellow human beings because justice requires it. Yet justice never demands that you abandon command of your own mind. You may love sincerely without making another person's behavior the foundation of your inner peace. You may serve faithfully without expecting constant appreciation. You may offer honesty without insisting that everyone welcome it. This is not emotional distance, it is emotional discipline. Many people confuse attachment with devotion because they have never examined the difference. Attachment says, I cannot remain whole unless you remain exactly as I wish. Devotion says, I will continue acting with integrity regardless of how circumstances unfold. One creates fear. The other creates strength. One clings desperately to what cannot be controlled. The other honors what is good while accepting the limits of human authority. Every relationship becomes healthier when dependence is replaced by disciplined goodwill. Ask yourself a difficult question. Who possesses the authority to decide whether your character remains honorable today? If your answer includes another person's name, then your judgment has already wandered away from reason. Only your own choices determine whether you act with justice, restraint, courage, and honesty. No insult can remove these virtues without your consent. No rejection can prevent you from behaving well. No misunderstanding can force you to abandon integrity. Your character remains under your own governance unless you willingly surrender it. Most emotional dependence begins quietly through repeated habits of thought. You imagine conversations before they happen. You rehearse possible disappointments. You search constantly for signs of approval. You adjust your actions to avoid criticism rather than to preserve honesty. Eventually, your attention becomes fixed upon reading other minds instead of governing your own. This habit deserves immediate correction. You were not given the responsibility of managing another person's thoughts. You were given the responsibility of managing your own. Return your attention there. Begin each morning with an examination before you engage with anyone else. Ask yourself where your peace is likely to be tested. Perhaps you expect recognition at work. Perhaps you hope someone will finally understand your intentions. Perhaps you desire appreciation for sacrifices that have gone unnoticed. Notice these expectations before the day begins. Once seen clearly, they lose much of their hidden influence. Replace every outward demand with an inward commitment. Instead of demanding respect, commit yourself to behaving respectfully. Instead of demanding understanding, commit yourself to speaking clearly and truthfully. Instead of demanding affection, commit yourself to acting with kindness free from bargaining. Instead of demanding certainty, commit yourself to remaining reasonable amid uncertainty. This practice returns authority to its rightful place. Throughout the day, observe how quickly your emotions attempt to follow external conditions. Someone praises your work and pride quietly enters. Someone ignores your effort and resentment begins whispering. Someone questions your judgment and defensiveness rises before reflection has even begun. Pause immediately. Do not suppress emotion through force. Examine it through reason. Ask yourself, what belief has given this feeling such influence? Has another person's opinion somehow become more important than your own commitment to virtue? Have you mistaken reputation for character? Have you confused acceptance with goodness? Reason untangles these knots, one judgment at a time. There is no need to become offended every time another person fails to meet your hopes. They possess their own struggles, their own judgments, their own weaknesses, and their own responsibilities. You are not appointed to govern their minds. The more energy you spend attempting to shape another person's inner life, the less attention remains for improving your own. The disciplined soul begins every correction with itself. This does not mean accepting injustice without response. Justice sometimes requires firm speech, clear boundaries, and decisive action. Yet, even while correcting another person, your inner stability must not depend upon whether they agree. Speak because truth deserves expression, not because agreement guarantees peace. Act because duty requires action, not because success is certain. Your responsibility ends where another person's freedom begins. Learn to recognize how often fear disguises itself as attachment. You fear being abandoned. You fear disappointing others. You fear standing alone. You fear losing approval earned over many years. These fears quietly shape decisions that should belong to reason instead. Examine each fear carefully. Ask whether the feared event would truly prevent you from remaining just. Would rejection force you to become dishonest? Would criticism prevent patience? Would loneliness make courage impossible? Would misunderstanding erase wisdom? None of these events possess such authority. Only your own choices determine whether virtue remains intact. The person who understands this becomes difficult to manipulate. Flattery loses its power because praise is no longer necessary for self-respect. Threats lose much of their influence because fear no longer governs judgment. Temptation weakens because immediate approval no longer outweighs lasting integrity. Freedom begins wherever another person's opinion ceases to command your conduct. Practice another discipline during ordinary conversations. Listen carefully without preparing your value according to the response you expect. Speak honestly without measuring every word against imagined approval. Accept disagreement without treating it as hostility. Permit silence without rushing to fill it through anxiety. This kind of presence requires tremendous inner strength because it refuses to negotiate dignity for acceptance. Notice also how emotional dependence often creates unnecessary resentment. When hidden expectations remain unspoken, disappointment eventually follows. You hoped someone would notice your sacrifice. You expected gratitude for your patience. You assumed another person would understand your intentions without explanation. Then frustration appears. Instead of accusing others immediately, examine the expectation that prepared your disappointment. Was it rooted in justice or in personal desire? Had you quietly transformed kindness into a transaction? Had generosity become an invisible contract? The rational mind seeks clarity before blame. At work, this discipline becomes equally important. Many people allow promotions, recognition, and public success to determine how they evaluate themselves. Their confidence rises and falls according to meetings, titles, or compliments. They become emotionally dependent upon circumstances that change without warning. There is a better way. Measure yourself first by the quality of your effort. Did you act honestly? Did you perform your responsibilities carefully? Did you improve where correction was needed? Did you remain fair under pressure? These questions belong entirely to you. The answers cannot be taken away by another person's decision. Strengthen your respect for yourself through faithful obedience to reason rather than through endless comparison with others. Comparison itself often reveals hidden dependence. You look outward, searching for evidence that your life measures favorably against another person's fortune. Yet comparison rarely produces gratitude. It usually feeds either pride or envy, both of which place attention outside the proper work of the soul. Return your gaze inward. There remains enough work within your own character to occupy every day of your life. Another valuable practice is learning to spend time alone without feeling diminished. Solitude reveals whether your company with yourself has become strong or neglected. If silence immediately creates discomfort, ask what you have been avoiding. Perhaps your own thoughts have gone unexamined for too long. Perhaps distraction has become easier than honest reflection. Do not run from this opportunity. Sit quietly. Observe your judgments without haste. Notice which thoughts seek approval. Notice which fears depend upon another person's acceptance. Bring each one before reason. Only what survives honest examination deserves your continued loyalty. As evening approaches, perform a careful review of your relationships throughout the day. Do not begin by evaluating another person's conduct. Begin with your own governing mind. Where did you seek approval instead of truth? Where did you remain silent because you feared rejection? Where did you exaggerate another person's opinion until it seemed greater than your own conscience? Where did you preserve dignity without becoming arrogant? Where did you show kindness without secretly demanding repayment? Each answer reveals another opportunity for tomorrow's discipline. Never conduct this examination to criticize yourself harshly. Its purpose is correction. A careful gardener removes weeds without hatred. A disciplined person removes false judgments with the same calm determination. Understand that genuine self-respect is not built through admiration of yourself. It is built through repeated evidence that you can trust your own character. Every promise you keep strengthens that trust. Every difficult truth you speak honestly deepens it. Every temptation you refuse because reason says no reinforces it. Gradually you become someone whose conscience carries greater weight than passing opinion. This kind of self-respect cannot be purchased through achievement. It cannot be borrowed from reputation. It cannot be granted by applause. It grows quietly through consistent obedience to what is right. Do not mistake stubbornness for inner strength. Self-respect never refuses correction when correction is deserved. A rational person welcomes truthful criticism because improvement matters more than pride. Emotional dependence rejects criticism because approval has become essential. Inner dignity accepts correction without collapsing because identity rests upon character rather than perfection. There is profound freedom in admitting mistakes without fearing that mistakes define you. You are not required to appear flawless. You are required to remain teachable. This humility protects the soul from both vanity and despair. Remember that every human being you meet is also struggling with judgments, desires, fears, and uncertainties. Expecting another person to carry your emotional stability places a burden upon them that no one can rightly bear. Relieve them of that burden. Govern yourself first. Offer friendship without possession. Offer loyalty without dependency. Offer compassion without losing command of your own reason. Such relationships become stronger precisely because they are no longer built upon hidden demands. As this discipline matures, something remarkable begins to happen. The praise that once intoxicated you becomes pleasant but unnecessary. Criticism becomes useful rather than destructive. Rejection becomes disappointing without becoming devastating. Solitude becomes peaceful instead of threatening. Success becomes an opportunity for gratitude rather than vanity. Failure becomes material for improvement rather than evidence of personal worthlessness. Nothing external has changed. Your judgment has. This is the transformation that matters. Every morning, renew your commitment to govern your own mind before concerning yourself with the minds of others. Every afternoon, correct emotional dependence wherever it quietly appears. Every evening, strengthen self-respect through honest examination rather than comfortable excuses. Continue this work patiently. Do not expect immediate perfection. Expect faithful practice. The disciplined soul is not created through dramatic moments. It is formed through countless ordinary decisions where reason quietly overrules fear, dependence, pride, and insecurity. Reject every habit that teaches you to seek your value outside yourself. Strengthen every habit that reminds you your character remains your greatest responsibility. Let justice become your confidence. Let honesty become your companion. Let self-command become your constant safeguard. Then, whether others praise you or misunderstand you, welcome you or reject you, remain close or walk away, your inner life will remain governed by something far more reliable than changing opinion. It will remain governed by reason. And a person governed by reason carries within themselves a dignity that no external circumstance can either bestow or remove. Number 6. Practice silent endurance until your character becomes your greatest strength. Many people believe strength is revealed through loud reactions, quick answers, or visible displays of determination. They imagine that power must always announce itself. Yet the disciplined mind learns a different lesson. The greatest victories often leave no audience. They take place in the quiet space between an impression and a decision. They happen when anger asks for a voice and receives thoughtful silence instead. They happen when hardship demands surrender and meets steady perseverance. They happen when discomfort arrives without invitation and finds a soul unwilling to abandon reason. Silent endurance is not weakness disguised as patience. It is the deliberate refusal to let passing conditions dictate lasting character. It is the choice to remain governed by judgment instead of impulse. A person who cannot endure small disturbances without complaint will struggle to remain upright when greater trials arrive. Every unnecessary protest against ordinary difficulty trains the mind to expect comfort rather than virtue. Every calm acceptance of unavoidable hardship strengthens the faculty that no external force can truly command. Examine the pattern of your own days with complete honesty. How often do you spend more energy resisting inconvenience than fulfilling duty? A delayed opportunity disturbs your concentration. A careless remark occupies your thoughts for hours. A minor frustration follows you long after the moment has ended. These events are rarely powerful by themselves. Their influence grows because the mind repeatedly invites them inward, revisits them, and allows them to shape the rest of the day. The disciplined person interrupts this habit before it becomes a ruling pattern. The first impression may enter without permission. Its continued authority depends upon your consent. This distinction deserves your constant attention. Every moment of endurance begins with a quiet decision that no one else can witness. You do not become stronger by waiting for life to remove difficulty. You become stronger by refusing to let difficulty remove your commitment to reason. There is no shortcut around this work. Character grows only through repeated encounters with circumstances that tempt you to abandon it. This is why hardship should never be viewed merely as an obstacle. Hardship reveals the present condition of your governing mind. It exposes where patience remains incomplete. It uncovers hidden pride that expected life to be easier. It shows where comfort has become more important than discipline. Without these revelations, many weaknesses would remain unnoticed for years. Receive these discoveries with gratitude rather than resentment. An unseen weakness cannot be corrected. An acknowledged weakness can become tomorrow's strength. Begin your mornings by preparing for the ordinary demands of human life instead of hoping they never arrive. Say to yourself that interruptions will appear, fatigue may visit, some efforts will remain unnoticed, certain conversations may test your restraint, plans may require adjustment. None of these conditions prevent you from acting honorably unless you willingly allow them to govern your judgment. This preparation is not an attempt to predict every event. It is a commitment to preserve your character, regardless of which events appear. Carry this resolution quietly into the day. Do not announce it. Practice it. The value of endurance is measured by conduct rather than declaration. Throughout the day, notice how frequently the desire to complain begins forming before you have fully examined the situation. Complaint often promises relief, yet it rarely improves judgment. It keeps attention fixed upon discomfort instead of responsibility. It magnifies inconvenience until it seems larger than duty itself. Ask yourself whether speaking the complaint will improve justice, wisdom, courage, or self-command. If it will not, silence may become the wiser response. Silence does not always mean saying nothing aloud. Sometimes it means refusing to continue an unnecessary argument within your own thoughts. The mind often repeats the same grievance long after the event has passed. Endure by refusing to rehearse what no longer deserves your attention. Direct that energy toward present action instead. One of the greatest forms of silent endurance is accepting correction without immediate defensiveness. When someone points out your mistake, pride quickly seeks protection. It searches for excuses. It recalls the faults of others. It attempts to preserve appearance instead of pursuing improvement. Reason chooses another path. It listens first. It separates truth from emotion. It accepts useful correction with gratitude, because character matters more than reputation. This ability cannot be developed in moments of comfort alone. It requires repeated practice whenever pride feels threatened. Each humble acceptance strengthens inner stability. Another valuable discipline is enduring misunderstanding without becoming consumed by the need to justify yourself immediately. Not every false opinion requires an instant answer. Not every criticism deserves prolonged attention. There are moments when your actions will eventually speak more clearly than repeated explanations. This does not mean abandoning truth. It means refusing to become emotionally dependent upon immediate recognition. Continue acting according to reason. Allow time to reveal what argument alone cannot accomplish. There will also be seasons when your efforts appear to produce little visible progress. Discipline may feel unnoticed. Honest work may advance slowly. Improvement may seem smaller than expected. During such periods, the impatient mind becomes tempted to abandon steady practice because visible rewards remain distant. This temptation must be resisted. The value of discipline never depends upon immediate results. Its value lies in the condition of the soul it gradually creates. Each faithful action strengthens character, even when external outcomes remain uncertain. Never measure today's effort solely by today's reward. Measure it by whether reason remained your guide. Observe carefully how endurance differs from passive resignation. Passive resignation abandons responsibility while pretending nothing can be done. Silent endurance fulfills every available duty without demanding complete control over the outcome. One surrenders effort, the other surrenders only the illusion of total control. This distinction protects the soul from despair. Whenever action remains possible, act with diligence. Whenever action reaches its rightful limit, accept that limit peacefully. Both responses belong to wisdom. At work, you will repeatedly encounter opportunities to strengthen this discipline. Projects may require more time than expected. Others may receive recognition first. Decisions beyond your authority may create inconvenience. Resist the temptation to allow frustration to become your constant companion. Instead, ask a better question. Given these circumstances, what action remains entirely within my own authority? Perhaps it is careful attention. Perhaps it is fairness toward difficult colleagues. Perhaps it is perseverance despite slow progress. Perhaps it is honest communication free from bitterness. These responsibilities remain available regardless of changing conditions. Fulfill them consistently. In relationships, silent endurance becomes even more demanding because emotion naturally seeks immediate reassurance. Another person's mood may change without explanation. Affection may be expressed differently than you expected. Disagreements may arise despite sincere intentions. Do not rush to interpret every change as a threat to your peace. Remain patient, listen carefully, respond thoughtfully rather than impulsively. Permit others the freedom to possess their own struggles without making every difficulty a reflection upon your worth. This quiet restraint protects both justice and understanding. Your endurance should never become an excuse for neglecting necessary action. If honesty requires difficult conversation, speak honestly. If justice requires establishing clear boundaries, establish them respectfully. Endurance concerns the government of your own reactions, not the avoidance of rightful responsibility. Courage sometimes speaks. Courage sometimes waits. Reason determines which response serves virtue. Learn to trust that judgment more than passing emotion. Practice strengthening endurance through small voluntary disciplines. Choose ordinary opportunities to remain steady when comfort invites indulgence. Walk a little farther than convenience prefers. Finish important work before seeking unnecessary entertainment. Accept brief discomfort without immediately searching for escape. These exercises are not intended to glorify hardship. They remind the mind that discomfort alone possesses no authority over your choices. Each voluntary act of restraint prepares you for involuntary challenges that life will eventually present. Another important practice concerns the management of disappointment. When expectations fail, avoid dramatic conclusions. Instead, examine the event calmly. Ask what has actually changed. Has your ability to act justly disappeared? Has honesty become impossible? Has patience been removed from your reach? Most often the answer is no. Only external conditions have shifted. Your governing faculty remains available. Return to it immediately. Every disappointment becomes lighter when viewed through this perspective. Guard yourself, especially against the desire for constant recognition. The longing to be noticed often weakens endurance because it teaches the mind to seek reward from unstable sources. Quiet integrity rarely receives immediate applause. Many of the finest actions pass unnoticed by the crowd. Perform them anyway. Your conscience remains a more reliable witness than public opinion. Let faithful conduct become its own satisfaction. Nothing prevents a disciplined soul from respecting work well completed, even when no one else acknowledges it. As evening approaches, withdraw your attention from external events and examine the quality of your endurance throughout the day. Where did impatience replace reason? Where did unnecessary words prolong discomfort? Where did silence preserve dignity? Where did you remain steadfast despite temptation? Where did inconvenience expose lingering attachment to comfort? Do not hurry through these questions. Allow each answer to instruct tomorrow's conduct. The purpose of reflection is refinement. Every honest review strengthens future judgment. Do not become discouraged when weaknesses appear repeatedly. The discovery of recurring weakness is itself valuable. It shows where continued training must be directed. Character is not transformed through a single insight. It is shaped through consistent correction repeated across many ordinary days. Trust this gradual process. Nothing worthwhile within the soul develops instantly. Notice also that endurance requires hope rooted in reason rather than in changing fortune. If your confidence depends entirely upon favorable outcomes, endurance will disappear whenever circumstances become difficult. Instead, place confidence in something more stable. Trust your capacity to choose wisely. Trust your ability to return to discipline after failure. Trust that virtue remains possible under every condition where reason remains active. This confidence cannot be taken away by delay, criticism, or uncertainty. It belongs entirely to the person who governs themselves. The strongest individuals are rarely those who experience the fewest hardships. They are those who repeatedly refuse to become morally smaller because hardship has arrived. Every trial presents two possibilities. Either it becomes another excuse for abandoning discipline, or it becomes another opportunity to deepen it. The decision belongs entirely to your own judgment. No event can choose for you. Even physical discomfort deserves careful examination. The body may become tired, it may become ill, it may demand patience beyond what you expected. Care for it responsibly because it serves important duties. Yet never allow bodily discomfort to persuade you that your character must also become weak. The body and the governing mind are not identical. One may suffer while the other remains honorable. Remember this whenever circumstances test your resolve. A person who preserves integrity during hardship possesses a strength beyond physical comfort. As your practice deepens, others may notice a quiet steadiness within you. They may wonder why ordinary disturbances no longer provoke the same reactions. Do not become proud of this progress. Pride weakens the very character discipline has strengthened. Remain teachable. Remain humble. Continue examining yourself more carefully than you examine anyone else. True endurance never announces its own greatness. It simply continues doing what reason requires. Each morning, renew your intention to meet the coming hours without surrendering your governing faculty to passing impressions. Each afternoon, return your attention whenever distraction or complaint attempts to lead you away from duty. Each evening, examine your conduct with complete honesty and patient determination. Allow no day to end without learning something about the condition of your own character. This daily rhythm gradually transforms endurance from occasional effort into stable habit. Over time, you will discover that external circumstances possess less influence than they once did. Difficulties still arrive, yet they no longer determine the quality of your responses. Delays continue, but they no longer steal your composure. Criticism appears, but it becomes material for examination instead of a source of lasting resentment. Loss enters life as it enters every human life, yet it no longer convinces you to abandon reason. Your strength has quietly changed its foundation. It no longer depends upon favorable conditions. It depends upon disciplined judgment. That is why silent endurance deserves your lifelong practice. It protects the governing part of the soul from becoming a servant to temporary events. It teaches patience without weakness. It teaches courage without display. It teaches perseverance without bitterness. Continue practicing until steady character becomes more valuable to you than immediate comfort. Continue correcting yourself before attempting to correct the world. Continue choosing reason when impulse offers easier roads. In time you will discover that your greatest strength was never the ability to avoid hardship. It was the ability to remain honorable while walking directly through it. And that strength, once firmly established within your own character, cannot be removed by any change in fortune because it no longer depends upon fortune at all. Number 7. Choose virtue above pleasure and discover lasting peace within yourself. You continue to suffer not because life denies you pleasure, but because you have never clearly decided what deserves your highest allegiance. You drift between what feels good and what is right, between immediate comfort and lasting integrity, between impulse and reason. In that drifting state, the mind becomes divided against itself. One part chases satisfaction, the other quietly knows that satisfaction without discipline always fades and demands more. This inner division is the true source of unrest. You must look directly at how often your decisions are guided by the pursuit of pleasure rather than the cultivation of virtue. Pleasure is not evil in itself, but it is unstable. It changes direction without warning. It grows demanding when fed without measure. It weakens judgment when treated as a ruler instead of a companion. A mind governed by pleasure becomes reactive. It seeks relief instead of clarity. It avoids discomfort even when discomfort is the doorway to growth. It confuses ease with wisdom. Virtue is different. It does not depend on external approval or favorable conditions. It is the steady commitment to act with justice, courage, self-control, and reason in every situation, regardless of how the moment feels. Virtue does not promise immediate reward. It promises something deeper. It promises stability of mind. It promises self-respect that cannot be taken away. It promises a form of peace that does not collapse when circumstances change. Examine your daily reactions with honesty. When discomfort appears, do you immediately search for escape, or do you first ask what action reason requires? When temptation arises, do you evaluate its consequences, or do you simply follow its pull until regret arrives later? When you are insulted or ignored, do you react to protect your pleasure of approval, or do you remain anchored in your commitment to behave rightly regardless of recognition? These questions reveal more about your character than any outward success ever could. Most suffering begins when pleasure becomes the silent judge of your choices. You start believing that anything difficult must be avoided, anything uncomfortable must be corrected, and anything emotionally unpleasant must be eliminated immediately. In this state, you stop asking whether an action is right and begin asking only whether it feels good. This reversal of authority creates constant instability. The mind becomes fragile because it depends on conditions that cannot remain constant. Virtue restores order by placing reason back in command. Begin your mornings with a simple but firm decision. You will not measure the day by how much pleasure it brings, but by how faithfully you act according to reason. Before you engage with anything external, examine what kinds of impulses are most likely to distort your judgment. There will be moments when comfort calls you away from duty. There will be moments when desire urges you toward unnecessary excess. There will be moments when fear disguises itself as caution. Prepare for these moments in advance so you are not surprised by them. Preparation reduces the power of impulse. Impulse weakens when it is recognized before action. During the day, observe how quickly the mind attaches importance to pleasure in small things. The desire for constant stimulation, the impatience when things move slowly, the irritation when expectations are not met quickly. These are not minor habits. They are signs that pleasure has begun to influence your sense of order. Each time you obey these impulses without examination, you reinforce the belief that immediate satisfaction matters more than disciplined action. Interrupt this pattern deliberately. Pause before reacting. Ask whether the action you are about to take strengthens your character or merely relieves a temporary feeling. This question alone is enough to expose many false decisions. You will notice that pleasure often presents itself as urgent. It insists that satisfaction cannot wait. It creates a sense of pressure that feels like necessity. But necessity belongs only to what preserves reason, justice, and responsible action. Everything else is optional, no matter how strongly it demands attention. The disciplined mind learns to withstand this pressure without becoming disturbed by it. Another important distinction must be understood clearly. Choosing virtue above pleasure does not mean rejecting all enjoyment. It means refusing to become enslaved by it. A person who eats when hungry, rests when appropriate, and enjoys life without dependence remains free. A person who requires constant enjoyment in order to feel whole becomes dependent and therefore unstable. Freedom lies not in the absence of pleasure, but in the absence of compulsion. Look carefully at where compulsion appears in your life. Do you feel compelled to check distractions even when work is unfinished? Do you feel compelled to seek approval before trusting your own judgment? Do you feel compelled to avoid discomfort even when it leads to growth? Wherever compulsion exists, freedom is reduced. Virtue begins where compulsion ends. Strengthen your ability to act without being ruled by immediate sensation. There will be moments when the body asks for rest while duty remains unfinished. There will be moments when the mind seeks entertainment while responsibility remains present. There will be moments when emotional discomfort encourages withdrawal instead of engagement. In each of these moments, virtue asks for a simple response: do what is right, not what is easiest. This does not require harshness toward yourself. It requires clarity. You are not punishing desire, you are training it. Just as physical strength is developed through repetition against resistance, inner strength is developed through repeated decisions against impulse. Throughout the day, practice observing pleasure without automatically obeying it. When something enjoyable appears, do not immediately grasp it. Pause and examine whether engaging with it supports your higher commitments or weakens them. Sometimes the answer will be yes, sometimes it will be no. The difference lies in whether reason or impulse is making the decision. At work, pleasure often appears as shortcuts, avoidance, or minimal effort disguised as efficiency. Virtue appears as careful attention, honest effort, and responsibility even when no one is watching. One leads to short-lived comfort followed by internal disorder. The other leads to steady peace that remains even after the task is complete. In relationships, pleasure often appears as the desire to be liked at all costs. It may tempt you to remain silent when honesty is needed. It may tempt you to agree when you should gently correct. It may tempt you to avoid necessary boundaries. Virtue chooses truth spoken with respect, even when it risks discomfort. This creates relationships built on clarity rather than illusion. You will notice that choosing virtue sometimes feels heavier in the moment. This is expected. What is right is not always what is easy, but observe carefully what follows each choice. Pleasure chosen without discipline often leads to regret, dependency, or inner conflict. Virtue chosen with reason leads to stability, even if the moment required effort. The quality of your inner life is determined not by how often you feel good, but by how consistently you act well. At midday, take a brief moment to examine your direction. Ask whether your decisions so far have been guided more by comfort or by principle. If you notice drift toward pleasure-driven choices, correct your course without self-condemnation. Correction is more valuable than regret. Regret only repeats the past. Correction improves the future. Another useful practice is to deliberately endure small discomforts without immediate escape. This is not about seeking suffering. It is about proving to yourself that discomfort does not control your decisions. Allow hunger, boredom, or inconvenience to exist for a short time without reacting immediately. Observe how quickly the mind tries to label these sensations as unacceptable. Then remind yourself that none of them prevent rational action. This builds inner authority. Authority over self is the foundation of peace. Without it, peace depends on circumstances that never remain stable. As you continue this practice, you will begin to notice a shift. The desire for constant pleasure weakens, not because life becomes dull, but because you stop treating pleasure as essential for well-being. You begin to experience satisfaction in doing what is right itself. There is a quiet confidence that comes from knowing you acted with integrity regardless of outcome. This is the beginning of lasting peace. Peace does not come from collecting pleasant experiences. It comes from removing inner contradiction. When your actions align with your reason, the mind no longer fights itself. There is no regret pulling you backward. There is no shame demanding avoidance. There is no dependence on approval shaping your identity. There is only clear action and steady judgment. At the end of the day, examine where pleasure influenced your decisions. Identify moments where you followed impulse instead of reason. Do not dwell in guilt. Guilt without correction is useless. Instead, identify the specific pattern that requires improvement. Perhaps it was avoidance of effort. Perhaps it was unnecessary indulgence. Perhaps it was fear of discomfort. Name it clearly so it can be addressed tomorrow. Then also recognize where virtue guided you correctly, where you chose discipline over ease, where you spoke truth despite hesitation, where you acted responsibly without external pressure. These moments are the foundation of your strength. Do not overlook them. They are evidence that reason is capable of governing your life. Over time, as these examinations continue, something essential begins to form. You no longer see virtue as a restriction placed upon life. You begin to see it as the only reliable structure that allows life to remain stable. Pleasure still exists, but it no longer governs your direction. It becomes a secondary experience rather than a primary goal. You begin to trust yourself more deeply because your actions no longer depend on fluctuating impulses. You begin to respect yourself more consistently because your behavior reflects your stated principles. You begin to feel a steady peace that does not require external validation because your inner life is no longer divided. This is the result of choosing virtue above pleasure. Not denial of life, but clarity within it. Not rejection of enjoyment, but liberation from dependence. Not suppression of desire, but governance of it through reason. Continue this practice daily. Let each decision become an opportunity to strengthen the authority of your rational mind. Let each moment of temptation become a test of your self-command. Let each evening reflection become a quiet reinforcement of your chosen path. In time, you will recognize that lasting peace was never something you had to search for outside yourself. It was always the natural condition of a mind that chooses virtue without hesitation, even when pleasure asks for something else. Number 8. Discipline your attention toward present duties instead of outcomes. You are not suffering because your duties are unclear. You are suffering because your attention is constantly pulled away from them. The mind keeps escaping into imagined outcomes, future praise, future failure, future approval, future regret. In doing so, it abandons the only place where life actually takes place, the present duty, the present action, the present judgment that is already in your hands. Everything else is speculation dressed as importance. Look carefully at how your mind behaves when you try to work, speak, or decide. It rarely stays with what is directly in front of you. Instead, it leaps ahead. It asks what will happen after this. It asks how others will respond. It asks whether this will succeed or fail in the long term. These questions feel intelligent, but most of them are distractions. They pull your energy away from the only point where reason can act effectively. The outcome is not your domain. It never has been. It arrives through many causes outside your control. Your reputation is shaped by minds other than your own. Your future results depend on countless variables you cannot command. Yet your attention continues to behave as though it can secure these things by constant anticipation. This is the root of disturbance. You try to live in places that do not belong to you while neglecting the one place that does. Present duty is the only ground where your will has full authority. When attention abandons this ground, confusion follows. You begin to feel pressure from imagined futures. You rush, you hesitate, you overthink, you second-guess actions that should be simple, not because the duty itself is difficult, but because your mind is split between doing and predicting. A divided mind cannot act with clarity. It becomes reactive instead of rational. The disciplined mind refuses this division. It brings attention back again and again to what is immediately required, not what might happen, not what should have happened, what must be done now, according to reason. This is not narrow thinking, it is precise thinking. It removes noise so judgment can function properly. Begin each morning by identifying what your present duties actually are. Not vague ambitions, not long-range fantasies, the real duties that exist today, the conversation that must be handled, the work that must be completed, the responsibility that cannot be avoided without compromising integrity. Write them in your mind clearly and without exaggeration. This simple act prevents the day from dissolving into scattered intention. Once duties are clear, train yourself to refuse unnecessary projection into outcomes. When you start a task, do not ask how it will be received. Ask whether it is being done with care, honesty, and attention. That is the only part under your control. Outcome evaluation during action corrupts attention. It turns the mind into a spectator of its own performance instead of a participant in its duty. You are not here to watch your life unfold as if it were someone else's story. You are here to act rightly within each moment as it arrives. When you catch yourself drifting into thoughts about results, bring the mind back without anger. Anger toward distraction only creates another distraction. Instead, recognize the pattern calmly. The mind is rehearsing what it cannot control. Then gently redirect it to what it can control. The next sentence, the next step, the next decision. This repeated return is the core of discipline. Most people mistake productivity for success. They measure themselves by outcomes completed, but the disciplined person measures themselves by the quality of attention brought to present action. A task done with scattered attention is not truly completed in the Stoic sense. A task done with steady attention, even if imperfect, reflects a mind under training. The true work is not only external, it is the governance of attention itself. If attention is trained, outcomes will follow as natural consequences. If attention is neglected, even favorable outcomes bring inner instability. This is why so many people feel restless even after success. They achieved results while their attention remained ungoverned. The external world improved while the inner world remained chaotic. You must reverse this priority. The first duty is not success. It is disciplined attention. Throughout the day, you will encounter many invitations to abandon present duty. Some will be obvious distractions. Others will be subtle. Worry about tomorrow disguised as responsibility. Regret about yesterday disguised as reflection. Concern about how others perceive you disguised as awareness. Each of these steals attention from the only moment where action is possible. Ask a simple question whenever you notice this drift. Is this thought helping me act better right now, or is it removing me from action? If it removes you from action, it is not guidance, it is disturbance. Release it without debate and return to the present task. You do not need perfect focus. You need repeated return. Each return strengthens control. Each distraction left uncorrected weakens it. Do not wait for motivation to align your attention. Motivation is unreliable because it depends on changing impressions. Discipline is reliable because it depends on choice. Choose to return even when the mind resists, especially when it resists. That resistance is the very place where training is happening. When speaking with others, keep attention on what is being said and how you respond, not on how the interaction might be judged later. Many conversations are ruined because the mind is already performing them for an imagined audience. You stop listening and start managing impressions. This breaks clarity and weakens presence. True presence is simple. It is attention fully engaged with the present exchange without adding imagined outcomes on top of it. At work, this principle becomes even more important. Projects suffer not because people lack intelligence, but because they lack sustained attention. They think about results while performing actions that require focus. They think about deadlines while losing precision in the present step. They think about recognition while neglecting accuracy. This fragmentation produces instability. Train yourself to isolate each task from its imagined future. When writing, only write. When speaking, only speak. When deciding, only decide. Everything else is noise. You will notice that when attention remains fixed on duty, anxiety decreases naturally. Anxiety thrives on projection. It grows when the mind tries to simulate future events it cannot control. When attention is grounded in present action, there is no space for such projections to dominate. The mind becomes simpler, not because problems disappear, but because unnecessary mental layers are removed. This simplicity is not ignorance, it is clarity. There will still be uncertainty, there will still be incomplete information, there will still be outcomes you cannot guarantee. Accept this without resistance. The goal is not to eliminate uncertainty. The goal is to stop letting uncertainty steal attention from duty. A rational being acts within uncertainty without becoming consumed by it. Another essential practice is to begin and end tasks without ceremonial pressure. Many people increase their own anxiety by treating each action as if it must determine their entire future. This exaggeration destroys calm judgment. Instead, treat each duty as what it is, a single action among many. Important in quality, not in imagined consequence. Do not inflate the weight of outcomes in your mind. Inflation creates fear. Fear weakens attention. Weak attention produces poor action. At midday, pause briefly and observe where your attention has been. Not in judgment, but in honest review. Has your mind stayed with present duties or drifted into imagined scenarios? Has your focus been steady or fragmented? Has your energy been directed toward action or toward internal commentary about action? If you find drift, do not interpret it as failure. Interpret it as information. It shows where training is still required. Then return immediately to present duty without delay. Even small corrections matter more than long reflections without change. At the end of the day, examine not only what you accomplished, but how your attention behaved while accomplishing it. Were there moments of clarity where action and awareness aligned? Were there moments where you were physically present but mentally elsewhere? These distinctions matter because they reveal the true state of your discipline. Do not evaluate yourself based on outcomes alone. Outcomes are shared with fortune. Attention is entirely yours. This is where self-respect is built. Not in results that may or may not appear, but in the consistent choice to remain present with duty despite distraction. Each time you return attention to the present, you confirm to yourself that your mind is governable. This confirmation strengthens confidence that is not dependent on external validation. Over time, something important begins to change. You stop feeling scattered across future possibilities. You stop carrying unnecessary mental weight about things not yet arrived. You stop measuring every action against imagined outcomes. Instead, you develop a steady orientation toward what is immediately required. This does not reduce ambition, it stabilizes it. A mind that can stay with present duty performs better precisely because it is not divided. It acts with clarity rather than tension. It responds to reality rather than speculation. It adjusts when needed without emotional collapse. The world will continue to present uncertainty. That will not change. What can change is whether your attention remains tied to it or anchored in what is yours to govern. Each moment gives you the same choice: drift into outcomes or return to duty, scatter into imagination or remain with action, lose yourself in prediction or remain with presence. Choose presence repeatedly, not once, not occasionally, but as a continuous discipline. In time, this discipline becomes your natural state. Attention no longer wanders as easily. The mind recognizes distraction sooner. Return becomes faster. Calmness becomes more stable, and present duty becomes enough. Not because life has become simpler, but because your attention has become trained. This is the foundation of real strength. A mind that remains with what it must do, regardless of what it imagines might happen next. Number 9. Welcome uncertainty because wisdom grows through willing acceptance alone. You suffer less from uncertainty itself and more from your refusal to live with it. The mind wants fixed outcomes, guaranteed paths, and predictable responses from the world. Yet reality has never agreed to those demands. It moves without asking for permission. It shifts without warning. It unfolds through causes too vast for your control. Still, you continue to behave as though certainty should be available if you think hard enough, plan well enough, or worry long enough. This expectation is the root of unnecessary disturbance. Uncertainty is not a flaw in life. It is the natural condition of it. To resist this is to resist reality itself. And when the mind resists reality, it becomes divided. One part of you tries to prepare for every possible future. Another part becomes anxious when preparation fails. Another part complains that life is unfair for not revealing its outcomes in advance. In this internal conflict, wisdom cannot form, because wisdom requires agreement with what is, not rebellion against it. You must begin by seeing clearly that most of what disturbs you is not what is happening now, but what might happen later. You are not reacting to reality. You are reacting to imagination. You are not facing the present. You are negotiating with futures that do not yet exist. This habit drains attention from what is real and places it into what is uncertain. The result is a mind constantly unsettled, even when nothing has gone wrong. Willing acceptance is the only stable foundation for wisdom. Not passive surrender, not emotional collapse, but deliberate agreement with the fact that reality unfolds beyond your full control. Acceptance does not mean you approve of every event. It means you stop wasting energy arguing with what has already occurred or fearing what has not arrived. You return your focus to what is available for action now. Look at your own daily reactions. When plans change, do you immediately tighten with resistance? When information is incomplete, do you rush to fill the gaps with assumptions? When outcomes are delayed, do you interpret delay as failure? These responses are not signs of intelligence. They are signs of dependence on certainty. The more you depend on certainty, the more fragile your peace becomes. Wisdom grows only in a mind that can remain steady without knowing what will happen next. This steadiness is not natural at first. It must be trained. The training begins with a simple recognition. You are not required to know the future in order to act correctly in the present. You only need to understand what is within your control right now. Your judgment, your intention, your action. Everything beyond that belongs to uncertainty. Each morning before engaging with the world, remind yourself of this distinction. You will encounter events that were not planned. You will meet people whose reactions you cannot predict. You will face outcomes that differ from expectation. None of this prevents you from acting with reason. None of this removes your ability to choose justice, patience, and clarity. Preparation is not about predicting details. It is about strengthening your willingness to meet whatever appears without losing your center. As the day unfolds, notice how often the mind tries to demand guarantees before acting. It wants assurance that effort will succeed before it begins. It wants confirmation that honesty will be rewarded before it speaks. It wants certainty that risk will not lead to discomfort before it moves. But no such guarantees exist in the human condition. Waiting for certainty is simply another form of delay disguised as caution. The disciplined mind acts without requiring certainty. It understands that action is based on reason, not prediction. When uncertainty appears, do not interpret it as a problem to be solved. Interpret it as the natural environment in which judgment operates. A sailor does not demand that the sea becomes still before sailing. He learns to navigate within changing conditions. In the same way, the rational mind does not demand fixed outcomes before acting. It learns to act within shifting circumstances. The discomfort you feel toward uncertainty is often the mind's desire for control beyond its rightful scope. It wants to extend influence into events that have not yet formed. It wants to secure outcomes that belong to countless external factors. But the more the mind attempts this, the more restless it becomes. Control over the uncontrollable is not power. It is disturbance disguised as ambition. True strength begins when you stop trying to eliminate uncertainty and start training yourself to function within it. This training begins in small moments. When you do not know how something will turn out, resist the urge to fill that gap with anxious prediction. When you are waiting for results, do not mentally rehearse every possible scenario. When you face incomplete information, do not rush to assume worst cases or ideal cases. Instead, return attention to what can be done now. This return is the foundation of stability. You are not required to resolve uncertainty before acting. You are required to act rightly within uncertainty. Throughout the day, examine how often fear of the unknown influences your decisions. Many people avoid action not because action is impossible, but because outcome is uncertain. They delay conversations, they postpone decisions, they hesitate in opportunities. They justify this hesitation as caution, but it is often avoidance of discomfort caused by not knowing what will happen. Wisdom does not eliminate discomfort. It removes dependence on certainty. When you accept that uncertainty is permanent, something important changes in your thinking. You stop treating unknown outcomes as threats to your peace. You begin to see them as neutral conditions of life. They are not punishments. They are not guarantees of failure. They are simply spaces where your judgment must operate without full information. This is where character is revealed. A mind that demands certainty before action remains weak. A mind that acts with reason despite uncertainty becomes strong. There is also a deeper form of acceptance required. You must accept not only that outcomes are uncertain, but that your understanding of events is always partial. You do not see all causes. You do not know all consequences. You do not understand every hidden factor shaping what happens around you. Recognizing this limitation is not discouraging, it is clarifying. It removes arrogance from judgment and replaces it with humility guided by reason. Humility is not self-doubt. It is accurate awareness of the limits of your perspective. From this awareness, wiser action becomes possible. During moments of difficulty, the mind often demands explanations before acceptance. It wants to know why something happened before it can move forward. But this demand often delays clarity. Not all causes are immediately visible. Not all explanations are required for correct action. Sometimes the only necessary step is to respond to what is directly present without waiting for full understanding. Acceptance does not depend on complete knowledge. It depends on willingness to engage reality as it appears. When you find yourself disturbed by uncertainty, pause and observe the judgment forming within you. The disturbance is not coming from the unknown future itself, but from the belief that you should not have to deal with it. That belief is the source of tension. Replace it with a clearer one. Life unfolds without your consent, but your response remains within your control. This shift in perspective reduces inner resistance. Less resistance creates more clarity. More clarity allows wiser action. At work, uncertainty appears in results, timing, recognition, and cooperation from others. If you require certainty in all these areas before acting, you will remain inactive far more often than necessary. Instead, commit to performing your role with attention and fairness, regardless of how uncertain outcomes remain. Let results unfold without becoming the condition for your peace. In relationships, uncertainty appears in the thoughts and emotions of others. You cannot fully know what another person feels or will do next. Attempting to control or predict this creates unnecessary anxiety. Instead, focus on your own conduct. Speak clearly, act justly, listen carefully. Leave the rest to circumstances beyond your control. The same principle applies to personal goals. You may strive with discipline and still face unpredictable results. This does not invalidate your effort. It only confirms that effort and outcome are not the same thing. Effort belongs to you. Outcome belongs to a larger chain of causes. Confusing the two leads to frustration. Separating them restores peace. At midday, check your mind briefly. Notice where uncertainty has been converted into worry. Notice where unknown outcomes have been treated as threats rather than possibilities. Gently correct this tendency by returning attention to present action. Do not argue with the unknown. Simply return to what is known, your current responsibility. In the evening, review your day with honesty. Where did uncertainty disturb your judgment? Where did you act despite not knowing the result? Where did you hesitate unnecessarily? Where did acceptance allow you to remain steady? This reflection is not for judgment of worth, but for refinement of perception. Each observation helps you see more clearly how the mind reacts to the unknown. Do not expect complete freedom from discomfort. That is not the goal. The goal is to remain rational even when discomfort is present. Acceptance does not remove uncertainty, it removes resistance to it. And in that removal, the mind becomes capable of functioning with greater stability. Over time, something quiet but profound develops. You stop fearing the unknown in the same way. You stop demanding guarantees from life before acting. You stop interpreting unpredictability as personal threat. Instead, you begin to recognize uncertainty as the field in which wisdom is practiced. Wisdom does not grow in perfect conditions. It grows in the presence of incomplete knowledge. It grows when the mind chooses reason without waiting for certainty. It grows when acceptance becomes stronger than resistance. When this understanding settles deeply, your relationship with life changes. You no longer feel constantly delayed by what you do not know. You no longer feel blocked by what you cannot predict. You act, you adjust, you reflect, and you continue. not because outcomes are guaranteed, but because your judgment is steady. And in that steadiness, a different kind of peace appears, not the peace of control over everything, but the peace of knowing that you do not need control over everything to live wisely. Number 10. Become impossible to disturb through constant obedience to reason. You are disturbed not by events themselves, but by your readiness to be disturbed. The world speaks, people act, plans shift, and your mind immediately reaches for interpretation. It labels, it judges, it reacts before reason has time to govern. In that instant, you surrender your inner authority, not because the event was powerful, but because your judgment was unguarded. To become impossible to disturb is not to become untouched by life. It is to become unshakably obedient to reason in the exact moment disturbance begins to form. The disturbance does not enter from outside. It is constructed inside through unexamined judgment. Someone speaks sharply. Something fails. Something is delayed. And before you evaluate what this means, you already decide how you should feel. That decision, made without reason, is where suffering begins. You must learn to see this process clearly. Between what happens and how you respond, there is a space. In that space, reason either governs or is ignored. Most people ignore it. They react immediately, as if the first impression is truth itself. But the first impression is only raw material. It is not wisdom. It is not judgment. It is simply an appearance that requires examination. Constant obedience to reason means refusing to let untested impressions rule your mind. It means pausing internally, even if only for a moment, before agreeing with the emotion that arises. Anger appears. You do not yet accept it as justified. Fear appears. You do not yet accept it as accurate. Frustration appears. You do not yet accept it as necessary. You bring each impression before reason and ask whether it deserves authority. This is the discipline most people abandon without noticing. They assume that what they feel must be true simply because it is felt strongly. But intensity is not truth. It is only force. And force without examination leads the mind into instability. A rational life requires the opposite approach. It requires that every impression be tested before it becomes belief, and every belief be tested before it becomes action. Look at your own daily disturbances. How many of them begin not in reality, but in interpretation? A delay becomes disrespect. A mistake becomes personal failure. A disagreement becomes hostility. None of these conclusions are forced upon you. They are chosen by the speed of your judgment. If you slow that judgment even slightly, many disturbances lose their power immediately. This is where your practice begins, not in changing the world, but in governing the first response of your mind to it. In the morning, before you engage with anything external, prepare your mind for this discipline. Decide in advance that you will not trust every impression that arises. You will observe it, you will question it, and only then will you accept or reject it. This preparation matters because most disturbances are not planned. They arrive unexpectedly. Without preparation, the mind reacts automatically. With preparation, the mind has a standard to return to. Throughout the day, every interaction becomes a training ground. When someone speaks to you, do not immediately assign motive or meaning beyond what is directly known. When something goes wrong, do not immediately expand it into a larger narrative about your life or worth. Keep your judgment close to facts. Reason operates best when it remains close to reality rather than speculation. Every unnecessary expansion of judgment creates disturbance. A small event becomes a large emotional reaction only because the mind adds layers of interpretation that were not required. Remove those layers and most disturbances shrink to their proper size. What remains is often manageable, neutral, or simply irrelevant to your inner stability. You are not asked to suppress emotion. You are asked to govern judgment before emotion becomes fixed. Emotion follows judgment. If judgment is disciplined, emotion remains proportionate. If judgment is careless, emotion becomes excessive. This is why the work of inner stability is not emotional control alone, but judgment control. When disturbance begins to rise, practice immediate recognition. Do not wait for it to grow. Notice the moment when the mind begins to tighten, when attention begins to narrow, when internal commentary becomes charged. At that exact point, step back mentally and ask what judgment has just been made. Not what has happened, but what conclusion you have silently accepted about what has happened. This question restores control. Often you will find that the conclusion is not necessary. It is an assumption, and assumptions are the primary fuel of disturbance. Once identified, you can release them without resistance and return to reason. Reason does not demand emotional suppression. It demands clarity of thought. It asks only that you separate what is known from what is assumed, what is controllable from what is not, and what requires response from what requires none. A mind obedient to reason does not become passive. It becomes precise. It responds only when response is required. It remains silent when silence is wiser. It acts without being driven. It refrains without being suppressed. This balance is what makes disturbance lose its authority. You will notice that many things that once disturbed you do so only because you believed they should not happen. That belief is rarely examined. It is simply assumed, but reality does not conform to personal expectations. When expectations are rigid, reality feels like a constant violation. When expectations are flexible, reality becomes manageable. Let reason correct your expectations. Expect that people will act according to their own understanding, not yours. Expect that plans will shift due to causes beyond your control. Expect that errors will occur because human action is imperfect. These expectations are not pessimistic. They are accurate. And accuracy is the foundation of stability. When expectations align with reality, disturbance loses its entry point. During conversations, especially difficult ones, observe how quickly the mind prepares responses while the other person is still speaking. This preparation often prevents true understanding. The mind is not listening, it is defending, reacting, or planning. Obedience to reason requires full attention before reaction. Listen completely before deciding what something means. Often what seemed offensive at first becomes neutral when fully understood. In moments of criticism, the first impression will often be defensive. This is natural, but natural does not mean correct. Pause internally. Separate the content of what was said from the emotional reaction it triggered. Ask whether any part of the criticism contains truth that can improve your conduct. If yes, accept it without resistance. If not, release it without attachment. In both cases, disturbance is unnecessary. The same principle applies to success and failure. Success often disturbs through pride. Failure often disturbs through self-judgment. Both arise from excessive identification with outcomes. Reason corrects this by reminding you that outcomes are not final measures of your worth. They are results of many factors, only some of which belong to you. Your role is not to control outcomes. Your role is to govern judgment and action. At midday, briefly examine your mental state, not to judge yourself harshly, but to observe patterns of disturbance. Where did emotion override reason? Where did assumption replace fact? Where did reaction occur before understanding? Each observation is data for correction, not evidence of failure. The goal is refinement, not punishment. Correction requires honesty without self-hostility. At the end of the day, review your interactions again. Identify moments where you remained steady despite provocation. Identify moments where you briefly lost clarity but returned to it. Identify moments where disturbance was avoided entirely through careful judgment. This review strengthens awareness of your actual capacity for self-governance. Over time, you begin to see a consistent pattern. Disturbance is not random. It appears in predictable moments where judgment is rushed, assumptions are accepted too quickly, or attention shifts away from reason. Once this pattern is visible, it becomes easier to interrupt. You are not trying to eliminate external disturbance. That is impossible. You are training your mind to refuse internal disturbance unless reason approves it. This distinction is crucial. External events will continue, but internal instability becomes optional. Constant obedience to reason is not a single achievement. It is a repeated decision. In every moment, you either allow impression to rule or you submit it to examination. One leads to instability. The other leads to steadiness that cannot be easily shaken. When this discipline becomes familiar, something changes in your experience of life. Events still occur, people still act, circumstances still shift, but they no longer enter your mind unfiltered. There is a pause, however brief, where reason evaluates before reaction. In that pause, freedom exists, and in that freedom, disturbance loses its power.